An enormous influence, really. If you can't have 11 children and bring them all up where no one dies, none of the grandchildren die, none of the great-grandchildren died, and when my mother actually passed away on the 18th of July, it's a significant day in my memory, not just because of her death, but that's about when all the other cascade of orchestrated attacks started on that very day. At that time, 4 generations had all survived, excepting Dad. And Dad died when he was 85 years of age. So we were an extraordinarily lucky family. And although we were very poor, the reality is that those sacrifices that Mum and Dad made gave us a chance. And to that, I'll always be grateful.
What sort of influence did your mum have on you?
Well, my mother had a dream and aspirations. She understood the romance and glamour of life and of ideas and of great beliefs and great causes. And so she had a terribly profound belief because she, how should I put it, she dreamt dreams for her children, and in doing so filled her children with those dreams.
Do you still dream those dreams?
Yeah, most of the time I do. That's what has kept me going in these last few weeks. I was never going to let myself be beaten off by this sort of behavior. I believed that what I did was right, and I suppose it kept me going. And over all these years and all the great battles that I've fought, it was never how I'd be advantaged by it, but they were worth being a fight to be had. And I thought the country would be a better place because of it. You know, the wine box and those rorts on the New Zealand Treasury and the Australian Treasury and on the Japanese banks was dragging this country down. The TVNZ bailout from absolutely fraudulent activities and then the sellout to the National Australia Bank. These things were causes worth fighting for, and I still see them in our society today. I see 29 finance companies go down, owing mainly to older people $3 billion. And yet, that has not been on the headlines, not even been on page 2, just Winston Peters. I set my mind that they were never going to win this battle. Well, let's talk. But have some accountability about that first.
Let's talk about that. What sort of effect has it had on you?
Well, if I look a bit emotional today, it's because of Brian's passing away, but in terms of effect, none whatsoever. They thought they were going to bust me, crack me, have me sacked, bring the government down and have an early election. That's what they thought they were going to do in July. And here we are, what's it, 25th of September, and they've lost.
Have you done anything wrong?
Most certainly not. Nobody thought I did anything wrong when I put all my money in for years to get the wine box up, and it cost me a lot of money.
Do you think Helen Clark should reinstate you as Foreign Minister?
Well, I agreed. I offered her I'd have to stand down, I said, because the SFO allegation is a serious allegation and has been painted by the media as being against me when it's against the party organisation, not Winston Peters. But you see how it happens? And that pressure was significant enough for me to say to the Prime Minister, look, I'll stand down as the Foreign Minister until I clear this matter up.
Do you want the job back, though?
Well, of course I do.
Before the election?
Well, I know that the SFO has got nothing on New Zealand First whatsoever. That's why they sneaked in this Parliament, round the back door, illegally, outside of Section 39 of their Act, and gave the information to the Privileges Committee, which I might add, rejected it.
How would you describe your relationship with Helen Clark, having worked with her over the past 3 years?
It's a respectful relationship. You know, I shake people's hands and I keep my word. Ask Jim Bolger. He and I didn't like each other. I had good cause not to like him. He'd sacked me twice, right? But we had a form of government, so I shook his hand and I kept my word right to the day that he got rolled by Jenny Shipley.
And Helen Clark, your relationship?
Likewise, I said to her that I believe in stability. I don't agree with a number of your policies, but here's the deal. We'll form a confidence and supply agreement. I don't want to see any more experimental social policy, and we'll get on with the things that matter, like the Cullen Fund, the Kiwi Savings Fund, all these things that are important in our country. And also, you don't have to call me up every day. I don't want to have meetings where, you know, you have to set aside a quarter of an hour to hold Winston Peters' hand every Wednesday. I said, I know how it happens elsewhere. I said, if it's got anything of concern, I'll call you, you call me. but nothing of a regular nature because, frankly, you're too darn busy, and so will I be.
What about national? Because John Key says he'll give up the government benches rather than go into coalition or any arrangement with New Zealand First.
Well, I've heard that a lot of times before. I heard that all the way through the 1996 election. In fact, I heard it all the way to the 1993 election when I started.
So you don't believe him that he would give up the government benches?
Well, when I formed New Zealand First on election night, you remember 1993 election night? It's a hung parliament, and they think they need me. Who's the first guy to call? Jim Bolger. 1994, 95, 96, slagging off Winston Peters. 1996, first call on election night, the National Party. Their record is to climb over cut glass for power, and that's not mine.
I'd like to know how long you're going to stick around in politics for.
Well, past this election for a start, right? And I'll make up mine after that. Because there's lots of things. I've got a horse that's now 11 years old that I've never ridden. I got him as one of the Kaimanawa horses, right? That was going to be going to the cat factory. And he's there. He still hasn't been broken in. He's having a charming life. And I'd like to sort of break him in before things go too further and enjoy riding him on the beach. So I'll make up my mind after this election, but in the meantime, there's a lot of things at stake in New Zealand, and we're running into serious troubled economic waters internationally.
We have to start winding up. But thank you very much for your time, and all the very best.
You're welcome. Thank you.
News when you want it.
You'll always be able to access the most up-to-date news
On TVNZ7.
And breaking news.
Backed by the nation's biggest news resource, One News.
It was a significant physical assault.
With updates on the hour, every hour.
Well, now Cross Live to report it.
Now the government wants to clamp
South
down.
Auckland Police are continuing their hunt.
And a full hour-long bulletin every night at 8.
For more information, we cross live now.
A longer look at the day's big stories.
Stories that count.
It's news for New Zealanders throughout the day on TVNZ7. For a roundup of the world's biggest sporting contests.
That's as good a feeling as I've ever had.
There's no better place to catch up on your sport.
That's what I care about.
Sport on 7, every day at 10:35 and 5:35, and again on Sunday from 6 till 9 a.m. on TVNZ7.
My first guest spends plenty of time in the spotlight, most recently thanks to difficulties faced by one of his rivals. Rodney Hyde, welcome to Leaders on 7.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with the inquiries looking at the New Zealand First donations. You've laid the complaints, the media's basically done all the work. Has this been about Rodney Hyde trying to raise his profile?
No, not at all. It's been about Rodney Hyde and the ACT parties trying to set a standard. We want a New Zealand government to be honest. That means ministers telling the truth and MPs telling the truth. We also want members of Parliament and our ministers to be held to the account by the law, just like every other citizen. That's what I've done. I've not attacked Winston Peters or bashed him up in Parliament. What I've done is I've gathered the evidence. I'm pleased to think you think the media's done all the work. I've gathered up the evidence. I've taken it to the Speaker. She's seen it as serious enough to refer to the Privileges Committee. I've taken it to the Serious Fraud Office. They've seen it as serious enough to investigate, and then I've taken it to the police.
Well, let's pick up your comment about attacks, because let me read you these quotes. Winston Peters had nothing but bluff and bluster. The PM doesn't know who to believe, well, I do, inferring, basically, that Winston Peters has lied. Is he a liar?
I believe so, yes.
Isn't that a personal attack?
No, it's a statement of the obvious.
Back in July, you taunted Winston Peters by calling him an old, tired drunk. That's a personal attack.
No, and I regret that.
So what's happened to this Mr. Nice Guy, Rodney Hyde?
No, I regret that attack. What was happening there was I was trying to ask reasonable questions. I came under a sustained attack from New Zealand First and Labour ministers, and I replied in that way, and as soon as I said it, I regretted it.
Going back to these investigations, there's no doubt about it, you've made the best out of it all the way through.